Vulnerability is the path to love, belonging, joy, intimacy, trust, innovation, and creativity. Think about this for a second. 85% of the men and women we've interviewed, 13,000 pieces of data, 85% can recall a time in school that was so shaming it forever changed how they thought of themselves as learners. 50% of those stories involved art and creativity. Now today I get asked to go into corporations, organizations, and the number one problem is there's no innovation. We don't understand what's happening. Without vulnerability, there can be no creativity. There can be no innovation. Without failure, which is maybe the ultimate experience of vulnerability, which can't happen when you're locked down like this, there can never be innovation. But I would argue one of the greatest casualties of invulnerability is this: empathy. So let's talk about some of the big blocks to empathy that are born out of a lack of vulnerability. Sympathy. So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. I'll tell you why. 4 things that empathy always had in common. They were perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. Empathy is, I'm feeling with you. Sympathy, I'm feeling for you. So sympathy is about feeling for, empathy is feeling with. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. So empathy is, you can't, with a locked up heart, with invulnerability, you cannot be empathic, because when you call me, empathy is not the default. Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. So sympathy is one of the things that really gets in the way of empathy, and sympathy is often how we respond when we don't want to be vulnerable to someone else's struggle. Does that make sense? The next one, blame. How many of you are blamers? How many of you, when something goes wrong, the first thing you want to know is whose fault it is? How many of you go to that place when something bad happens, the first thing you want to know is whose fault is it? Even me. I'd rather it be my fault than no one's fault. Because why? Why? Because it gives us some semblance of control. It gives us some semblance of control. But here, if you enjoy blaming, this is where you should stick your fingers in your ear and do the na thing, because I'm getting ready to ruin it for you. Because here's what we know from the research. Blame is simply the discharging of discomfort and pain. It has an inverse relationship with accountability. Meaning that people who blame a lot seldom have the tenacity and grit to actually hold people accountable, because we expend all of our energy raging for 15 seconds and figuring out whose fault something is. Accountability, by definition, is a vulnerable process. It means me calling you and saying, hey, my feelings were really hurt about this. It's not blaming. Blaming is simply a way that we discharge anger, which is really hard. And blaming is very corrosive in relationships, and it's one of the reasons we miss our opportunities for empathy. Because when something happens and we're hearing a story, we're not really listening. We're in the place where I was, making the connections as quickly as we can about whose fault something was. Empathy is not scripted. I can't say, okay, go forth and be empathic, here's the decision tree. If they say this, do this. Empathy is about being present with someone, and if you're present and engaged and you take the armor off, you'll know what the person across from you needs. But more importantly, if you screw it up and you see in the eyes of the person that who's sharing with you that you've screwed it up, you can go back and say, okay, wait, I'm just a hugger. I'm here, I'm with you. Keep telling me, I wanna know, I wanna be in this with you. The reason why I think that exercise is so helpful is, again, we all need different things from empathy. There are no hard and fast rules about what empathy looks like or sounds like, but there is one that I will share with you from the research. It is, someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better instead of leaning into, if I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection. Sometimes the most profound and eloquent examples of empathy happen without any words, and sometimes not even with eye contact. To me, if I'm sitting next to you and I say, wow, I feel like everything's just, the wheels are falling off right now and things are out of control, and someone just puts their hand on top of my hand and squeezes, that says, with touch, I think, the two most important words in my work, which are me too. The one thing I talk about a lot is that I think the place we have to start is understanding that we have to support each other. Men and women have to really support each other and understand that vulnerability is the path back to each other and the path to intimacy. You show me a woman, women say they want vulnerability, and they say, tell me you're afraid, and show me yourself. But the truth is, they're disgusted by it. So what men do is they get very good at pretending to be vulnerable. Just vulnerable enough to get off the hook, but not so vulnerable that they really cause a lot of problems in their relationships. So I always say, if you show me a woman who can sit with a man who's in deep vulnerability and fear, I'll show you a woman who has some awareness about this work and has done it. And most importantly, who does not derive her power from that man.